Nick speaking, and welcome to this video, Necron Learning Curve, and in this video we're going to look at the Destroyer Lord. First of all, we'll talk about the model. So this is the model that I've got here. This is the original Destroyer Lord. They used to be jet bikes, but they are now jump packs. Yeah, the model doesn't really suit that, but you know, hey ho. I'd like to also introduce you to my very first conversion, which is this guy, which is basically the top half of the Destroyer body on a bottom half of a Wraith. I also added this little cape here as well. I thought it'd be quite nice when I use him with my Wraiths to have him actually on a Wraith body, so to match him in a little bit more. I've got a couple of scarabs on the base there, and one of them is holding the Resurrection Orb. There you go, which is basically just a little ball bearing that I used. Okay, so let's have a chat about the Destroyer Lord. So previously in the last video we were talking about the Overlord, and I suggested that the Destroyer Lord was on the same pedestal as the Overlord, and I certainly stand by that, although there's one difference here. I would suggest that the Destroyer Lord would be the ideal second HQ choice rather than your first. In other words, you don't really want him as the Warlord because there's a very high probability that he will die. Not because he's not very good, but just from the nature of how you're going to be using him. So let's have a look at some of the stats. So first of all, the guy comes as standard with the Warsight, and as in the previous video with the Overlord, that is just a fantastic option. 2d6 penetration, +2 to your strength, it's AP1, so it's a really great anti-infantry, anti-monstrous creature, anti-tank weapon. So I would stick with that. I wouldn't bother changing for any of the other upgrades in terms of the weapon options. His key feature, apart from obviously being jump pack, which gives him nice movement, gives him the Hammer of Wrath. It's not as good as it was when it was a jet bike, but you know, you can't have it all. But his key feature is that he has preferred enemy. So that means that you can re-roll any one. So don't forget, now that is to hit and to wound. But more importantly, any unit that he joins gets preferred enemy. So when you stick this guy in with another unit, they're going to be able to re-roll their ones to hit and wound, which opens up this guy to be pretty awesome for your Necron force. I like to use him in basically three ways. The first way is to have him in with a unit of destroyers. That means that you can obviously re-roll those guns to, you know, any ones you just re-roll them, which is fantastic because they have pretty awesome guns. You know, strength 5, AP3, as previously discussed on their video, great Space Marine killers, and if you can re-roll those ones to hit and wound, fantastic. So very, very good for that. And then if you want to have a bit more offensive unit, then yeah, stick him in with the Wraith. So in close combat, your Wraiths now re-roll your ones. Fantastic. Makes the great Wraith unit a super Wraith unit, especially if you're going to stick the weave on him. Gives him his 2+ save, so on the way in he can go up front if you wish, take your 2+ save, take your lookout sir. Obviously you do have the option of putting the Wraiths up front with their 2 wounds and 3+ invulnerable save, so you've got a few options there. But once again, when you're using it with the destroyers, again weave, stick them up front, 2+ save on your destroyers, very, very useful. Other options, Mind Shackle Scarabs, I think we've pretty much established that's pretty much always worth taking. Okay, if you've got them in with the destroyers, you could argue that it's not, because you may not be getting to close combat, but certainly with the Wraith option, well worthwhile. Tachyon Arrow, personally I wouldn't spend the points on it, although it's a nice gun. You can only use it once and it's pretty expensive. Resurrection Orb, again it depends how you're going to use him. If he's in with the destroyers, then 100% well worth having. Of course if you got him in with the Wraiths, then I wouldn't bother, because obviously Wraiths don't have the reanimation protocol anyway. Now I mentioned 3 ways of using these guys. or this destroyer, and The third one is to have him in with a group of warriors. Now that does sound maybe slightly odd, but if you're going to use him a bit more of a defensive role, or potentially if you have no choice and you can only afford 1 HQ in your list and you take the Destroyer Lord, you could put him in with the warriors, as I said, be a bit more defensive with him. But imagine him in a unit of 20 warriors, backed up maybe by Ghost Arcs to get that unit back up, a little bit like the Super Phalanx that we've previously talked about. And then their Gorge weapons are going to be able to re-roll any ones, which is pretty good. So yeah, quite a few options for him. As I said, personally I like to use him as a second HQ choice. He works really well in my Flayed One army list, where I've got Imhotep at the back as the Warlord, and then this guy just goes out with the Wraiths and just causes as much havoc as possible. Okay, so that is it for the Destroyer Lord. Again, a very good choice. And next up, we're going to have a look at the Royal Court. And I think I'll do individual videos for each Harbinger. Okay, more to come.